Hey, beautiful people. This is Charity Berrier Jones with Gumbo for the Soul. In this episode, this was probably one of the most difficult episodes that I've had to do, but I just wanted to, of course, I just met my real dad, so that was exciting. So stay tuned. I'm talking about that. How I felt to meet my real dad for the first time. How we got to cross a couple of bridges together, literally. So thank you guys once again, and also how I got a chance to rewrite the narrative. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for walking on this journey with me, and I hope you enjoy. Peace out. All right, hey, beautiful people. This is Gumbo for the Soul. I am your host, Charity Berrier Muhammad, and it has been an eventful last few weeks, if I do say so myself. This is Gumbo for the Soul, and I always bring it to you raw. I bring it to you real. Well, what has happened in the last 2 weeks is the fact that I got to meet my real dad for the very first time ever in my entire life. So, as a 41-year-old grown woman, I got a chance to meet my real dad in person. Now, it has been like super emotional. Like I have been like actually, this all happened 2 weeks ago, and this is, I don't know how many times I have attempted. I've kind of lost count how many times I've attempted to make this episode. So bear with me, and here goes. So you pretty much know my history. If you've been following my story. If not, let me give you a little backstory. My real mom passed away when I was 3 and my brother was 5. She did not tell us who my real dad was. Like, I had no clue. So my childhood was a very tumultuous childhood. I'm a survivor of 2 Medusas, and I talk about in an episode where one of the Medusas was my step grandfather, who was supposed to be raising me, and the other one was one of my uncles, right? So that's my background, that's my childhood. I've also been diagnosed as a result of my childhood. I've been diagnosed with CPTSD and anxiety. On top of all that, I'm also a single parent. Single parent to 2 boys, right? So I do everything in my power. That's part of the reason why I started this whole podcast journey. As a way of journaling, right? Because I learned that from going to therapy. That it's best to get everything out. It's not good to hold everything in. So I had not shared anything about my childhood or anything with anyone but outside of my therapist. And I've been going to therapy for over ten years now. You know how that goes when you go into therapy. You don't always, apply, the lessons that you learn in therapy, or maybe you're just not ready. Okay, so now fast forward to about it's been about 2.5 months now, where I decided to figure out who my real dad was. Because I didn't want to leave that legacy for my boys, the fact that, what my step grandfather did to me. I didn't want to pass that legacy. I didn't want to pass that down. I do everything I can, in my everyday life, to make sure I don't pass that, trauma to them. I use a lot of coping mechanisms and all of that. So now, fast forward to 2 months ago, I went looking for my real dad again. Found him through a DNA test, right? But with all that came a whole lot more anxiety, a whole lot more triggers, right? Because I talk about in a previous episode where I learned that my real dad has a birthday in August, and my step grandfather also has a birthday in August. So in the whole entire month of August, I focused on reclaiming the month of August, right? Because I didn't want the month of August to be overshadowed by the trauma, that I suffered from my step grandfather. I wanted to replace the trauma with joy, and with happy moments. So I feel like I was successful in that. And my real dad, he knows. Like I said, I found him because I took a DNA test, went on ancestry.com, and we're writing a book about that. So I'll share more details about that later. But so we found my real dad. We have been in communication for the past 2 months, right? We do Zoom calls, and we do our Zoom calls almost every day. And that has been helping me a whole lot too, when it comes to my anxiety and all that. But I wanted to talk about the fact that we actually met each other in person for the first time 2 weeks ago. So he had an event that he was doing in New Orleans. My dad has a nonprofit where he sleeps in slave dwellings. He preserves our history, our Black history, so that it's not forgotten and so that it cannot be erased. So he had an event in New Orleans a couple weekends ago, and he invited me down. Now, I want to also say that that is one of the first things that he said to me when we had our first conversation in July. We had our first conversation on July 9th. And one of the first things he said to me was, hey, I'm coming to Louisiana in September, so we can meet each other in person. So, just imagine me with all my anxiety and all that. And like the first thing this man that I'm just speaking to on the phone, mind you, well, we know the DNA says he's my real dad, but I've never had a real dad before, right? So it's like I'm still wrapping my mind around, even though I did everything to find him, right? I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that, number one, we found him. Number two, we're actually having a conversation on the phone, right? So now, and then like one of the first things he says is, I want to meet you. I want to meet you in person. And I'll be coming to Louisiana in like a couple months. So July 9th is when he says this. And now we're in the month of September. So we meet the first weekend in September. So, leading up to it, I'm all excited, because we're talking on Zoom. We're getting to know each other. We're creating a bond and everything. But, meeting a person in face to face, or meeting them in person, for lack of better words, that's a totally different thing. Like, to go from talking to somebody every day on a Zoom, like on a computer screen, versus like actually meeting them in person, that's a totally different thing. So everything's going, everything's good. I'm kind of excited. I'm nervous and I'm excited. I'm nerve-skited, right? So now we had to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. We had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to make the trip, because we decided it was best for myself and with me having two small boys, for us to take a rental and drive down there, right? So, everything's mapped out. Everything's all planned. But of course, I wait till like the night before to pack the car and everything. We decided to let my boys stay up really late, then that way they will sleep most of the way down there. So that plan worked out. But okay, so we get up that morning, like I'm still nervous. I'm still a little, nerve-skited, a lot nerve-skited actually. But thankfully my brother was helping me. He's going to help me with my boys. And because it was going to be dark when we left, he volunteered, to help with that part of it. Okay, so we're there, we're on the road, we're heading down there, right? And so I was excited. I was more excited than nervous. So I'm listening to music, I'm playing music, singing songs, trying to jam out, trying to hype, I'm hyping myself up, like, so I won't be like as nervous, right, about the whole situation. Then as we get closer and closer, I felt butterflies, right? I started feeling butterflies in my stomach. So I'm taking deep breaths. I'm like going, I'm screaming. Like, I'm just trying to do everything I can to like calm down. Now on the way down there, of course we had to cross like a bridge over water. Now that's another one of my phobias, is crossing over bridges with water. And the reason why I have a phobia of crossing over bridges with water is a movie called The Mothman Prophecies. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but that's all I'll say. It's a movie called The Mothman Prophecies, and that's the reason why I have a phobia of crossing over bridges that are over water. I have a phobia when it comes to that, right? So Of course, we had to cross over a couple of those to get down there. And then even to get into New Orleans itself, right? We had to cross over that long, 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 long bridge. You know what I'm talking about. If you've ever driven to New Orleans, we had to cross over that. So not only am I nervous because I'm about to meet him for the first time, I'm like super nervous and super freaking out because we had to drive over all these bridges over water, right? And not only did I have to cross over, I had to drive over the bridge too. Had to drive over it. All right, so gotta cross the bridge. Now, you may or may not know, but one of the things that happens when you have CPTSD and anxiety, like I have both, right? So, your phobia can be kind of crippling sometimes. You're either gonna go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? So, but if you're about to cross a bridge that's over water, you can't do that. You can't turn around and go back. Like once you start, you got to keep going, right? So, that's the good thing about the bridge, I guess, is the fact no matter how nervous or how scared I thought I was, it's like you got to cross it. You got to cross the bridge, and that's an analogy that you can use in life as well, right? But it was like in order for me to get to meet my real dad, I had to cross that bridge. You know how people say we'll cross that bridge when we get to it? Well, I had got to it and I had to cross it. So I crossed it. I was nervous, but I couldn't show my boys, right? Because my boys, they're gonna vibe off me. And my baby boy was awake, just so happened to be awake. The oldest was asleep, but the baby boy, and one of the things he said that I'll never forget, he was like, "Mom, we're trapped. We're trapped." So I was like, okay, I gotta basically put on my big girl panties and be like, no, we're not trapped. I had my brother answer him like the first time, but then after that, I was like, you know what? I gotta buck up, man. You gotta suck this up, So I was like, no, we're not trapped. We're gonna get to the other side, right? We got this. So that was on the way to pick him up. Okay, so we get to the airport and my boys were asleep. I had planned this whole moment out. The moment that I had planned didn't happen. But I was able to get out of the car. I had made a sign, right? I had wanted us to have like our whole moment and everything. But the crazy thing is, like, I was excited and I was happy, right? It was exciting and I was happy. Then I got nervous, right? And whenever he came down the escalator, I was hiding. Like, for some reason, I wanted to hide behind the sign. So I was hiding behind the sign, but we got pictures, we got our hug and everything, and I got all emotional, right? But I didn't cry. But I got like super emotional. And I was nervous, and then it was like we were sitting there, and then it was like the nervousness kind of just started melting away. So then we had to drive right back across the bridge to get to the Airbnb. But the good thing though this time is that he was right there, in the passenger seat right there. And so the nervousness and the fear that I felt, it was like, I guess you could it's almost like, like when you learn how to ride a bike almost, it's like, and then it was kind of nostalgic too, because it was like, I'm 41 years old and we're just now meeting each other for the first time. But he got to cheer me on, and encourage me, as I was driving across the bridge. And guess what? We actually had to drive across about 3 of those bridges to get to the events that he had to do. So he was there, to help me with conquering my anxiety and conquering my fear, when it came to crossing that bridge over that troubled water, pretty much like the song, The Bridge Over Troubled Water. So that felt really good, to know that he was there, and he didn't dismiss it. Like I said, he didn't dismiss it. He wasn't like, you a grown woman, like, why are you scared to cross over a bridge? But nope, he just said, you could do it. We're right here. He was basically just cheering me on, so that made me feel a whole lot better, right? I wasn't as anxious. So like I said, I did it. I know at least about 6 to 8 times while we were there, and we spent the whole weekend together. Now the other part that I wanted to talk about. Oh, I also need to talk about how it felt physically, right? So when you're freaking out, or when you're having like I call it emotional crash out, it's pretty much like you're having for me, it's like having an anxiety attack. It's like having an anxiety attack. It's like a melt. It's like you basically feel like the bridge is going to collapse and you're going to fall into the water and you can't swim. That's my phobia. My phobia is the bridge collapsing and I cannot swim, so we're not gonna be able to get out of the water. I'm not gonna be able to save myself or my boys because the bridge is gonna collapse and I can't swim, right? So I'm nervous, I'm sweaty, I'm scared, I'm like freaking out. I want to close my eyes. I'm like holding on to the steering wheel with like a death grip. That's what it felt like, and that's what it feels like. And it's like anxiety like grabs a hold to you and it won't let you go. But you have to basically breathe through it, and you have to tell yourself you can do this, you can let that go. Okay, so it wasn't just like concrete and steel. It was like me crossing from fear into freedom, right? So even though I was afraid, I still did it. Now the other way, so I was able to rewrite that narrative, right? Now the other narrative I was able to rewrite with my dad was, mind you, like I said, I'm a survivor of 2 Medusas, so a lot of the abuse happened at nighttime. And I talk about that in my book that I'm writing. I have another book that I'm writing. I talk about that a lot. So the biggest deal, the other thing that I was able to rewrite, the other narrative, was just the simple fact that we had planned for my dad. He sleeps in slave dwellings, right? He sleeps in slave dwellings. So just the fact that I was able to get over my phobia and rewrite the narrative of let me see if I can finish this. Okay, so one of the traumas that I experienced was it happened at nighttime, right? So my step grandfather used to abuse me at nighttime. So that's been like a phobia of mine, right? Nighttime. I always have problems falling asleep at night. Sometimes I have nightmares, different things like that. All the anxiety and the PTSD that comes along with, that trauma happening to me at nighttime. And it happened, repeatedly, right? So we had a Airbnb, and the way the Airbnb was set up, it was set up to where, everybody could have their own rooms. But we ended up having another guest, and it was still going to work out to where everybody was going to have their own bed, but not everybody was going to have their own room. So the suggestion was that, well, there was 3 bedrooms in the Airbnb. There's 2 bedrooms that have 2 beds in it, and then there's another bedroom that had 3 beds in it. So naturally I was like, I'll just, take the room with my boys, and we won't have to worry about that conversation. But the conversation came about where my dad was like, you could let the boys have their own room, and then you and I could be in the room that's got the 2 beds in it. And of course, like mentally, I'm like freaking out. I'm like, like I'm not doing that, because you have to understand that the only thing that I've ever known is my step grandfather and his abuse, right? So to have my real dad to say, and to him and probably to everybody else, it's probably like no big deal, but to me that was a huge deal. It's a huge deal to be able to actually trust this person. It's like, even though you're my dad, right? You're my dad by blood and by DNA, right? But we've never known each other. We just met each other. And the only person that I've ever known, right, that was supposed to be raising me took advantage of that, right? He abused that trust. And that's 2 family members, right? That's my step grandfather that abused me, and then that's one of my uncles that abused me. So basically two men in my life that were supposed to keep me safe, they did not keep me safe. Instead, they abused that. They abused that because I was a child, right? Because it started when I was 3, and it ended when I was 10. And then one of my uncles, he tried it when I was 16. So, that's my history, right? And that's my past. And that's the narrative, that they wrote for me. Yeah, so that right there, is like actually a big deal, to actually even be comfortable, to even be in the same room, with him. Just the fact of my history, right? Um, so that was like a monumental moment, for that to even be a consideration. Um, and like I said, like it's no big deal to everybody else who has not suffered that trauma. But it's a big deal to all of us survivors, that have ever survived, a trauma like that. I mean, because that's one of the things that happen at night, right? At nighttime is the worst time for me, I'll say, is because it's like you kind of relive that trauma. You have nightmares, you freak out, and honestly, I had a couple of nightmares right before the trip happened, and the nightmares that I had nothing to do with my real dad. It has everything to do with my step grandfather and what he did. And so, that was my whole goal with, reclaiming the month of August is, to not let the trauma that I experienced from my step grandfather, to not, bring that over into, my relationship with my real dad. So, to be able to rewrite that narrative was huge for me, because when the topic was first brought up, as far as he and I sharing a room, I was like, heck no, I'm not doing that. Like, I was freaking out. But I thought about it and I was like, if I'm gonna, we're healing out loud, I'm gonna rewrite my narrative. This is my narrative, this is my story, right? So I've already come so far, like why would I not keep going, right? So it's like all these fears that I have projected onto you know basically these are fears that came from the trauma that happened to me, and the fears that I have nothing to do with my real dad, right? They have nothing to do with him as a person, nothing to do with his character or anything, nothing that he's ever said or done. Because he's a great guy, and I'm extremely thankful for him and everything that I have learned from him just in these past 2 months. But the fact that I was able to rewrite that narrative on this trip, is a big deal for me to actually, to because my thing is always, if I've ever been traumatized by anything, I try to rewrite that narrative, right? Like, if I try to go back to, like, I guess the scene of the crime, you would say, and I try to replace it. So if I have a place in my life that has like a lot of bad memories, I try to replace it with good memories, right? So just to be able to say, and like I said, it may not be a big deal to you or anybody else, but to me as a survivor of trauma, and the trauma was happening to me at nighttime in my own bedroom, in my own house. As a child growing up, I was being abused every night, right? So to just be able to reclaim that narrative, or take that back, to say that, number one, I met my real dad, right? I met my real dad 41 years later, and also to be able to say that, like, literally we spent the night in the Airbnb and nothing happened to me, like, and that was like a huge step for me. So not only did I drove across several bridges over water and did not flip out and made it across to the other side several times, but I also am able to say that I rewrote that narrative too when it comes to my history and the trauma that I experienced as a child growing up. Is that for me, like, I'm able to, like, completely trust my real dad, so I don't have to have that phobia or that fear when it comes to my real dad. Like, even something as simple as, like, when we got to the airport, I was freaking out. I was like, am I gonna hug him? Am I gonna hug him? Am I not gonna hug him? Because, like, I have a thing when it comes to physical touch, right? Like, I don't like I don't like to be touched whenever I don't want to be touched, right? But it was like, for some reason, it just felt natural, because I never ever. Now, this, I guess you have to understand that as a child growing up, I was forced to hug my step grandfather, because nobody knew what he was doing to me at nighttime, right? So I was forced to hug him, because it would be like, what would everybody think if I didn't hug him in public, right? So, but for me to actually, like, we're at the airport and I meet my real dad for the first time, and he basically, like, he opened his arms up to hug me, right? And it just felt like the most natural thing. It didn't feel awkward or anything. It felt like the most natural thing to give him a hug, right? So, this is the first time that I've been able to, like, even have this discussion. Actually, I have restarted this video several times, but yeah, it just felt really good. So, yeah, this trip, there were a lot of things about the trip that I want to talk about. Well, of course we'll have more episodes, with me and my dad and everything, but I knew that I needed to talk about this solo, and because it was, like, super monumental for me. And even that night, right? I almost forgot. That night, normally at nighttime, I have to have music. I have to have music to fall asleep to, because the silence is always so loud at nighttime for me. Like, it kind of, like I said, you kind of relive the trauma that you experience, especially at nighttime. But that night, seriously, the funny thing about that night, though, is that I went to the bathroom and I was still, like, freaking out about it, right? So I went to the bathroom and I stayed in the bathroom for like 15-20 minutes. Then I came out the bathroom, right? And guess what? He was literally knocked out. Like, he was literally snoring. So, and for clarity, right? It was a big bedroom, and it had 2 beds in it. So, I was in no danger at all whatsoever. But you couldn't tell my mind that, like, not with my anxiety and not with my CPTSD. We don't think logically when you're in the middle of a emotional crash out. You're not thinking logically. But the good thing, I guess the funny thing though, like, while I'm in the bathroom having a crash out, he was literally out there knocked out, like, sound asleep. So I came out the bathroom, he was literally laying there snoring in his bed on the other side of the room. So I go to my bed on my side of the room, and I'm like, well, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna listen to music? Like, what am I gonna do? So I listened to music that night, and I turned it down on low or whatever. But the next night when we went to the slave dwelling, I did not need any. I didn't need to listen to any music. Of course, at the slave dwelling, there were other people, but he and I, we picked our own room to ourselves, and everybody else, kind of picked their own room. But I didn't need any music that night when we spent the night at the slave dwelling. And it's a good thing that we did that at the Airbnb the first night. That way, I was able to have a full experience when we got to the slave dwelling the next night, because the anxiety that I felt was not from being in the room with him. The anxiety was, but I even felt like a sense of peace and a sense of calm, because, I felt like we were surrounded by, our ancestors that night when we were at the slave dwelling. So, I conquered several fears. I conquered my fear of bridges, driving over bridges. And I conquered, the silence that happens to me at nighttime due to my trauma, and I got a chance to rewrite that narrative. So all this was pivotal for me. I hope it reminds you that fear does not have to be the end of the story. So with love, support, and a little courage, fear can become the bridge to freedom. So thank you once again for listening. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for walking on this journey with me, and now walking on this journey with me and my dad. So yeah, I really do appreciate you guys. And hopefully this was helpful to you as it was for me. Peace. Woo! As you can see, that episode was a doozy. The episode was a doozy. But thank you guys for walking on this journey with me. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for liking and subscribing. As always, if you could drop a blue heart in the comments, just as a sign of solidarity. Drop us a blue heart in the comments once again. Thank you guys for walking on this journey with us. Stay tuned for more episodes. As you can see, we're only 2 months in. So far so good though. I mean, I am truly thankful and appreciative that my dad is in my life now. Um, yeah, because it's been a lot. Yeah, it's been a whole lot. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for walking with us. Stay tuned for the next episodes. Peace out.